our sponsors, Mercado Libre and Alfred Sloan Foundation. If you would like to sponsor OSI, please talk to me or to Nick later. Oh yeah, here's something about me. That was a spectacular introduction, by the way, whoever did that. I just love that. Is that you in the back? Yeah, that was great. So I don't need to spend time on this. This is actually helpful because it has the acronyms. OSI, OSAI, Open Source Artificial Intelligence, co-designing the open source AI definition, the OSAID, and that's it. That's all the acronyms. Okay, we did this. Oh, great. Benefits of OSAI. Should I do benefits of OSAI, or should I just keep going and talk about the co-design? I'll do it quickly. I mean, they're basically the benefits of open source. And this is from the Digital Public Goods Alliance. I did not write it. So transparency and safety, right? This makes sense. Market decentralization and polyculture spurs innovation, more access to models by more actors, diverse applications. So you can have localized applications representing different cultures, representing different languages, right? That's really good if you're speaking Spanish or Portuguese, and aligned with different value systems. So this is why we say OSAI is a good thing. So this open source AI definition, the OSAID, we wanted to create it globally, right? And we wanted to use co-design to create the definition. So what is co-design? Before this week, I had a very long kind of academic definition of co-design. And then I was at Mercado Libre, and I was talking to Maria Cruz, who is a speaker here today. And I was asking the audience, I was like, oh, how do you define co-design? And she said, co-design means designing with others. I was like, oh my God, it's so brilliant. She's like, yeah, it's in the name, co-design. She thought that I was an idiot. Like, she was about to walk out of the presentation. She's like, this woman doesn't know what she's doing. But anyway, now this is my definition. I told her, she gave me permission, so thank you. And why use co-design? Global definition requires global consultation, right? We want to be equitable and inclusive in our representation. And this is a little kind of some snapshots of what the process looked like. We had in-person workshops, we had virtual workshops, that's me up in Hong Kong, that's beside me is Taranima at India FOSS, Rahmat was in Senegal. Most of these pictures, working group pictures, are from the US, and you see people like actually writing on paper, this is what share should mean, this is what study should mean. This is just, and yeah, we were in 5 continents in person, and virtual participation from more than 35 countries. And you say, oh, why not more countries? It actually could be more. It's just that we were very careful with the data we collected from people. We asked consent for, can we know where you're working? And these are just from the people who consented. So there are a lot of other participants, and we say, welcome our anonymous participants, and we hope that you're from around the world. So this was our first co-design question for the Free Software Foundation principles: use, study, modify, share. What should these open source principles mean for AI? And so we started with these in-person workshops. So this is October of last year. We're in North Carolina. You can see people were literally writing on paper. This is what I think use should mean. We had small groups around a room. Again, in the US, on the other side of the country, and you have people, we're writing, this is what share should mean, this is what study should mean. And we were in Ethiopia. At this point, we had kind of a rough draft. You can see in the corner, it's printed out. It said study, and then are again collecting Post-its to get more feedback. And then these are the 4 freedoms that are in the definition now, version 0.0.9. And so use the system for any purpose and without having to ask permission, study how the system works and inspect its components, modify the system for any purpose, including to change its output, and share the system for others to use without modifications for any purpose. And these are the 4 freedoms of open source in our definition right now. So the second question that we wanted to ask through co-design: what components must be open in order for the AI system to be used, studied, modified, and shared? This was the most controversial part of the process. Without a doubt, you can imagine if you're working in the field, people would have not only a lot of opinions, but very passionately held opinions. So we started, again, with offline, with in-person. We were in December in California. We're asking people which components, had them writing on paper. And then someone said, this would be so much more inclusive if you were doing this virtually. And I was like, you know what? That's right. And also, it's cheaper, actually, to work virtually. You don't have to fly around like I'm doing right now. I live in Seattle. So we did basically shift to a virtual co-design process at the beginning of this year, which made it more accessible, which allowed for that representation from 36 different countries, and which also made it more transparent because at that point, we were actually asking everyone, when you become a volunteer, please allow us to share your name and your affiliation publicly so everyone can see who has this power to create this definition. So we had 4 different work groups focused on 4 different models with 4 different approaches to openness, AI openness. Like OpenCV is not even generative AI, right? Bloom is obviously a corporate project. Llama 2 is a corporate project. Bloom is an open science project. Pythia is a project that was also kind of built by volunteers. So very different approaches. And these are the individuals who are actually in these groups, again, all volunteers. 50% people of color, 30% Black, 25 women, trans, and non-binary. That should be higher, but we were trying. And this is just another example of doing outreach to say, please, people who are usually not represented in tech decision-making, we really actually mean we want you to be in this group and in this process. So the way we did this part of the co-design is we had the working groups voting, again, with their initials, so they are publicly voting, to say which components from a list called the Model Openness Framework. Does anyone know that? It's from the Linux Foundation. It's good. I recommend it. So you can see this is just a screenshot of the code, the different code artifacts. So for example, like test code, inference code, evaluation code. Obviously, the list continues. And, is this required to use? Is this component required to study? Is this component required to use, modify, share? Then I tabulated up all these votes, and we actually had someone in our forum recently who made these beautiful visualizations of the range of different votes for different components. So that just went up recently. Then I reported out which got more or less votes, and as a result, which was more or less likely to be in the preferred form, right? So you can see the ones that got the most votes: training, validation, and testing code, inference code, model architecture, model parameters, supporting libraries and tools, and then everything below that had fewer votes, data pre-processing, like slightly fewer votes, and then like substantially fewer votes, training data set, testing data set, usage documentation, research paper, and on and on. And that was in March, and then we waited for feedback. A little bit later, we published the next version of the definition, 0.0.6, because this project actually began a year before I even joined. So, and that had the component checklist, and also the different licenses requested for each component. And then we've had more versions. 0.0.7 in April was just tiny wording changes. 0.0.8, we actually had, it was feature complete. So we had all the components, all with a license recommendation for every component. 0.9, we decided to simplify a little bit. Now the checklist is a separate document. And then release candidate 1 is coming next week, and version 1.0 is coming at the end of October. So this is kind of a snapshot. If you were to take a picture of what is the open source AI definition, it's basically this. It's the 4 freedoms: use, study, modify, and share. It's open weights, so model weights and parameters. It's open code, so the source code used to train and run the model. And then it's data information, which is the data set or detailed information about the data used to train the system. And yeah, you've already seen that. Yeah, I've already seen that. Okay, so the most controversial part of the definition is the fact that the data sets are not required. Methodological information about the data set is required, but not the data set itself. And there's more information here about why we made that decision. Basically, there's a lot of limitations on resharing of data that if we made data sets a requirement, this set of open source AI systems would have been very small. And we wanted to have a set of systems that was systems that people could actually use. Folks like the Digital Public Goods Alliance said, we actually want to have AIs that are digital public goods. We want the definition for open source for AI to be slightly more generous so we can have a larger pool of open source AIs that we can promote, that people that have less access to resources can use to build, to innovate. We can come back to this issue, but yeah, this was definitely the most controversial part of the definition process. This is also probably a little bit too detailed with 9 minutes left. So then our third co-design question was, which AI systems meet the criteria of the OSAID? Again, we had volunteers, not work groups, but we had a few volunteers for these 13 models. We had at least one person not involved with the system, looking at each system, so that, yeah, just to have some balance of perspectives. And we had the components on the far left. You can see the different components from the model openness framework, then the legal framework required. Then in D, you can see kind of the document and documentation they actually found. So like this, they found a lot of documentation on Medium. This was in GitHub. This was in Hugging Face. This yellow means they couldn't find it at all. And then it says, our study use modification and sharing allowed. So as you can see, it was challenging, actually, to assess whether these systems are open according to the definition. And that's why we have this range of like expected yes, expected no, unclear. We found that we really did need the collaboration of open source AI creators to get all the documentation we needed to know, is this system open source or not? So this is as far as we could get with mostly volunteers. But as of now, I could say that the open source AI systems would likely be Arctic, LLM 360, Olmo, Pythia, T5, among others, because obviously there are different systems that didn't go through the process. This is just the different types of stakeholders we had. About a third were developers creating AI systems. About a half were people who actually did want to study, use, modify, or share a system. So it was quite a technical group. I think if there's a shortcoming, we did not have many people who were like just users, like just someone who's used a chatbot, or someone who has not used a chatbot at all, but they're impacted because maybe their data is being collected for an AI system. So I think it was helpful to have experts in the groups making these decisions, but that's also could be a shortcoming, is that it was not broader than that. This is our timeline. We're in September. I'm here at Nerdiala. We're launching RC1 very, very, very end of this month, and then version 1.0 next month. Yes, there is still an opportunity for public participation. We are looking for individuals and organizations to endorse the OSAID. Yes, and I will, this QR code will be on the next slide. And what endorsement means is it means that your name and organizational affiliation will be added to the press release or the website when we announce the OSAID, because we want to show that this is something that people around the world like and will use. And there's a web form. If you use the QR code, you will go to our forum, and then pinned is a post about how to sign up to endorse. And you can talk to me, or Nick is sitting here with the laptop in the second row, and he's our community manager, and talk to him too. So yeah, please endorse the OSAID, join our public forum, comment in RC1 when it comes out next week. We have every version in a HackMD instance where you can comment on it. You can become a member of OSI, free or paid. And we also have weekly virtual town halls that you can come to and ask us questions live. And yeah, just finally, thank you to our co-designers. These were our most active volunteers that were reviewers, that were in the virtual work groups, that were voting. And yeah, so thank you to all of them. Oh, this one somehow doesn't have our, there was a version where I highlighted, we have just one co-design volunteer from Argentina. It's Ezequiel Lanza from Intel. I don't know if any of you know him, but there was a version with his name highlighted. But so thank you to the co-designers. And yeah, thank you, and do Cornell.
Awesome. Big applause, and we have plenty of time for questions. So don't be shy, no sean tímidos. Ahí, muy bien.
Hi. I have a question. When you say that including data set on open source AI models was a strategic decision to allow more models to be open, and in a way, I guess, making more companies building the open source AI models with the rules of the open source standard for AI. It reminds me a little when GPL has born and they decided license for the GNU C compiler, and they made, I don't remember right now the name of the license, but non-copyleft license they made, so GCC could compete with other C compilers, because if they made GCC copyleft, that would make lots of companies not using GCC. And to keep open source as an alternative, they decided strategically, and they talk about it on the Free Software Foundation page, they decided to make this not that restrictive on a copyleft license to compete with non-libre software. So it's kind of that, making the non-data set needed to be included to make more companies try to follow the other needs to be open source, so it can be easy for study and keep it open source.
Yes, great. I like, you have a deeper knowledge of the legal history of open source than I do, so that sounds great. Thank you. Cool.
First of all, great job with the presentation, despite all the things that were moving under your feet. So my understanding is that training a foundational model is incredibly expensive. Why is it so important for the code to be able to run your own foundation model? Why is that so important for a model to be considered open, given that it's unlikely that I'm going to just like take $10 billion and buy some GPUs and train the model myself?
You are now coming to the point in the presentation, which I used to give in the very beginning, where I say, I am not a technologist, I am a co-designer. So I'm afraid that I would answer that incorrectly. Does anyone feel like they can answer his question? Someone, do you want to answer it? Okay. Yeah, Nick is OSI's community manager.
Thank you. I believe Bill Gates, he gave like a preview, right, of what could go wrong. Many decades ago, he said, all you need is like, I don't know, 4,800 kilobytes of RAM. Why would you ever need more, right? And the amount of memory has just jumped hugely. We are at the very beginning of AI and GPUs. We have already seen systems that can do inference much faster than NVIDIA GPUs. And it's very likely that this is going to be exponential, the growth, not just in terms of the hardware, but also in terms of the algorithms running that. So while it might seem like, why is this important? We, as individuals, we might never be able to actually run or modify those codes. I personally believe that hopefully in not such a distant future, each one of us will be able to run an open source AI system on our mobile. We're not even going to have mobiles maybe in the future, right? They're just going to be there and learning with us and respecting our privacy and running this locally with us and helping us, right, with everyday functions. So that's my hope. And the reason why it should be open source is because it will preserve our privacy and it will help us as individuals and not some distant corporation who's trying to sell us ads. So.
Awesome.
Great job.
Thank you, Nick.
Thank you.
One more question there.
Hi. What level of AI and open source expertise will someone need to become a member and help in this project?
Any. There's not anyone who volunteered to be part of a work group who was not welcomed onto the work group. So yeah, we have everyone from the developer to someone who is an unwitting subject of AI, which through data is kind of all of us. So yeah, if you want to be involved, you can. I will say we are shifting at this point into more of a maintenance process where it will be, I assume, similar to maintenance processes for other open source projects, even open source software projects. So there'll be a group of people reviewing every 3 months, 4 months, however it is, to say, does this need to be updated? So the work would be a little different, but yeah, I can't see why anyone would be rejected.
Would you recommend this something like a first experience for the people who are just starting?
Interesting. Would I recommend it as a first experience?
At least volunteering.
I guess, Nick, what do you think? Do you think that the co-design process is something that a beginner could feel comfortable in? Okay, Nick says yes. Because Nick's our community manager, so he knows more about community. So you say yes. Okay. Yeah, I'll repeat, or she'll give you a microphone.
Just beginners. She asked me several questions last year when I gave a talk, so I do remember you. Yeah. So your question is about just beginners in general. So I'm going to give a little story here. Hopefully we don't have, we have a few minutes, but I think it's funny since we're in Latin America, right? So I used to organize events all over Latin America, and we did one in Peru, the Incan culture. And there in the Incan culture, they have they look at the stars and the sky, and instead of creating constellations, looking at the stars and connecting them, they actually look at the clouds, the dark patterns, right? So they have the Yama constellation, where it's just that dark pattern, and the two stars are the eyes of the Yama. And I thought that was beautiful because everyone looks from one point of view and they see something, but someone totally different have a different perspective. And that's why having a beginner, right, or having people from Latin America or from elsewhere, and even the most unlikely, right, like a kid, a child, right, can a child comment on the code design process? We're going to have children participating in Nerdiarla here, I believe, tomorrow. And I think that's the beauty behind Nerdiarla, because you include everyone. And that's the beauty of code design, bringing everyone together. Everyone has something to add to that. So that would be my long answer to your question.
Beautiful.
Thank-
Yeah, I think that's kind of the last.
Thank you.
It's so beautiful.
It's amazing. Thank you, Mayor, and thank you everyone for this. Así que seguimos ahora con más nerdearla.